Urmează un interviu super făcut de Vlad Otrocol, pregătit de Vlad Otrocol. Imediat va intra live alături de noi. Va vorbi cu Keith, un client asist software, actualmente partener la 𝗠𝗱𝗿𝗀, fost angajat NASA, da? Eu zic că aveți ce afla de aici, printre multe altele, bineînțeles. Vor discuta despre Web 3.0, blockchain și, zic eu, multe alte lucruri interesante. Așadar, rămâneți alături de noi. Zic că merită acest interviu să-l vedeți.
Hi everyone, hope you are having a wonderful time at Assist Open Doors. Today I'm here with Keith Rosema, who is a partner at 𝗠𝗱𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗄. Keith is an absolutely wonderful guy who's been involved with a lot of extremely interesting and high-tech companies, especially startups. But also, as we know him, he's one of the most, how should we say this, good vibe people that I've ever met. He's always positive and he's always spreading sunshine around him. It makes everybody happy whenever they meet him. Keith, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thanks for having me here. I'm glad to be able to participate.
So just to start with, to provide a bit of context, maybe you can tell us a bit more about Madrona and your role there as well, and also 𝗠𝗱𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗄.
Great. Yeah. So I'm a partner with 𝗠𝗱𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, which is a startup studio that is part of 𝗠𝗱𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀 Group. 𝗠𝗱𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 Group is the largest venture capital firm in the Pacific Northwest. We're based in Seattle in the United States. And, you may have heard of some of our investments. One of the very first investments by Madrona was a little tiny unknown company called Amazon.com. And we've been doing tech development ever since. You might have heard of companies like Snowflake that recently went public, or in Romania, maybe a little company called UiPath, that is the largest robotic automation company in the world. A startup studio, 𝗠𝗱𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, where I'm a part of, is part of the venture group that works with the very smallest, earliest stage companies. So people who are just founders at the very beginning of their ideation, not sure if they really have an idea yet or not, don't have customers yet. How do you get a company from being a couple people in a garage to a venture-funded company that has millions of dollars and is ready to go deliver a product to customers? That's what the studio does. So I work with founders at the very beginning, and we try to build their companies from zero to seed funding in, like 3 to 6 months. And, of course, that's why I talk to Assist, because Assist helps me do that with lots and lots of different companies.
Yeah, we've been involved with a couple of, I'd say, extremely interesting projects. I'd say some of the most interesting projects that we've been involved with so far. Yeah, we can only imagine, all the other ones that are happening around there. And you've had so much experience with so many of these companies, and you've been around this industry for so long. What do you see the most important trends right now in the IT industry in terms of technology are in the short and medium term?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Some old trends come back, like the old things are new again. One of my very first startup companies that I myself founded was an encryption technology company. And we're seeing a lot of cryptography, encryption, security, and of course, blockchain is coming back big time. Web 3.0 is coming over the horizon. And so I'm getting to spend a lot of time with companies working in those technologies even today. Other great things, I mentioned UiPath. I worked on a company called 𝗓𝗏𝗋𝗋 that does robotic process automation, and automation, of course, is a big trend. Data ops, ML ops, machine learning, and AI continue to be really strong trends. That industry and those technologies are reshaping all kinds of things, everything from commerce to fitness programs and things like that. So continue to be excited about that. And then one thing I'm just very personally interested in, I think it's got a long ways to go. I think we're really just at the beginning. But that's the world of sort of, I would call them environmentally positive companies, climate companies, energy companies, places where it's really important, and the world's beginning to recognize it's important, but we're still trying to figure out how to build businesses and technologies around that. And so there will be a lot of development there as well. I'm just really excited to work on all those things.
That's it's really, really interesting. You mentioned there Web 3.0. That's people have heard about machine learning, AI. They've heard about blockchain now. It's all in the hype. But what is Web 3.0? I think a lot of the students would know what that is all about. Is it?
Yes. So Web 3.0, the way I think about it is it's connecting blockchain to our internet and our browsing and all of our experiences, just in the same way that encryption technology connected it before. So, back in the day, we all had our private keys, and I had a little plugin that allowed me to encrypt my email, but encryption technology was not core to the way the internet operated. And today, of course, you type HTTPS into your browser and you get an encrypted communication protocol underneath, and it allows us to do all kinds of things, like the fact that we can type our credit card into our web browser and hope for a transaction to happen on the back end. That's what encryption technology was for the first set of web. Web 3.0 is about doing that with blockchain. So it's about, you can imagine, moving the wallets into your web browser and bringing NFTs into your web browser and allowing all those blockchain transactions to be part of your everyday browsing experience. A concrete example that I know some folks are working on, and you see this a little bit in the gaming industry, is I give you an NFT, and that NFT, possession of that NFT, becomes your token for ownership into a game or a site. You can't get in unless you happen to possess one of these NFTs, and you can sell that NFT or transfer it to some other account that you have or something like that, and then that authorization is transmitted that way. And that's just one example of Web 3.0, and I know there will be a lot of developments coming forward, but I really see it as bringing the world of blockchain technologies and smart contracts and cryptocurrencies in line with all the things that we're already doing. And there's just a ton of stuff that will come out of that. I know some people have bigger visions. It may expand way beyond that. I'm sure Metaverse has some plans for that. We'll see how it works out.
I've watched recently a podcast, and they were talking about the progression from Web 1.0 to Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. So to give a bit more context, Web 1.0 it was basically a library on the internet where you just go and look for static information, and that's it. Just go get stuff. Web 2.0 was when everything was connected, so people started socializing, all the social platforms and YouTube and videos, and people just talking to each other and starting to create communities. And Web 3.0 is mostly for content creators. As content creators will become a really big thing in the near future because of this. And if, like you mentioned, if browsers would be able to support all of this natively, if you'd be able to have a wallet in the browser, that would be insane. It'd be you don't even need credit cards anymore. Like you just go through your browser, you go on a website and just securely be able to purchase things and prove that you own things and things like that.
Or as you say, create things and pass them around. I just that really could be a new world. I think we're early. To be honest, I think I and a lot of other people and investment in the venture capital community, we're all excited about that. I personally think it will take a long time to develop, but that's exciting. It won't be just next year or the year after. It's a long-term trend that we can look into building.
Yeah, I mean, definitely this is going to get a lot of people interested. A lot of people are looking. If they probably don't have enough money to invest into coins, but at least they're really passionate about it and they know everything about it, even if they don't actually invest in it. But they know about all of the new coins and how they evolve over time. But there's another big subject that we haven't talked about yet. Is this is what's happening right now with the pandemic, right? I mean, everybody had some sort of image of where things were going, and then boom, the pandemic, COVID hit, and a lot of things changed in the world. How do you see all of this, the IT industry being changed, and what was the fingerprint that COVID has left, or is leaving right now in the industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. And before we dive into the industry thing, I will say that, but before I came to Madrona, I worked for another group, and one of the things we worked on was pandemic detection and awareness. And there's actually a whole field of science and programming and modeling around trying to figure out where pandemics come from and how they affect us. So at a really big level, people are still trying to figure out the science and models and how pandemics actually work in the world. And so we've learned a lot in the last couple of years. And I think socially we'll continue to learn that. So you might remember right at the beginning, like COVID broke out and everybody's like, okay, we got to lock down. We're going to wear our masks. We're going to be safe. But, this should be over by the end of the summer. And of course it wasn't, and everybody, started out having their back to work plans, and then the back to work plans got pushed off, and they got pushed off, and they got pushed off. And sort of every time we think it's going to end, it kind of comes back. Now we have the new Delta variants, and so I think eventually the awareness is, no, the world has changed, and we probably are in a fully hybrid world, not just because we like it, but because the pandemic may last way longer than any of us imagined or hoped. And I will say that, and I don't want to sound bleak or bad. You said I like to spread sunshine, but something to be careful about is this probably won't be the only pandemic. There will be others. The way the world works and the way diseases work, the world may see this again and again. And so eventually it will be a thing we learn to manage and live with and have to get around. And I'm sure we will do that. But we will have challenges coming along. The good thing about it is I think we have learned to live and work differently. Not only, do we all think about hybrid work environments now, the fact that you and I are having this kind of conversation is almost a result of that. Everybody is more willing to work remotely, and that has given us exposure to people around the world. It's much easier now for me with my startup companies to work with people in different time zones, in different nations, just because there's a greater acceptance of our ability to communicate and get along and work together remotely. And I think that's tremendous because it's also brought a huge diversity of thought and opinion and working styles to everything we do. I learn tons from people I work with around the world because they have different viewpoints and different experiences and different things they do. And so, I think there are great things that have come out of that. And finally, it's funny how resilient at least our part of the world is. When the pandemic appeared, everybody in the venture community was very concerned because we thought that innovation was going to dry up. We thought the economy was going to, not do well. And we thought that there would be no more investments in startups. And in fact, absolutely the opposite happened. Madrona has done more investments and seen more new startup companies and a better variety of startup companies in the last 2 years than we've ever had before. And a lot of it's because there's just people trying to figure out new ways of doing things and creating new opportunities. It's actually been a really, really exciting time in technology and science and business development, despite the fact that the pandemic is a very scary thing.
Yeah, it's just I remember there was a statistics. I hope I'm not misquoting, but they measured the internet traffic after the pandemic restrictions have been put in place, and it grew something like 30%. I hope I'm not misquoting the actual percentage, but it was a lot, and that's a lot for the old world traffic. That's a lot, and it wasn't even everywhere yet. It was just starting. And the companies, I mean, if you just mentioned Netflix, like they probably had a huge spike in traffic just around then. And also, we've also experienced the same kind of feeling that everybody's trying to figure out new ways of doing things. We've seen people, who had sandwich stores wanting to a sandwich delivery app, bars now having beer delivery apps and things like that. Everybody wanted to do an app for delivery for anything to get stuff to your home. Perfumes, if you don't walk by a perfume shop anymore, you just get it at home, and all kinds of things like that. I'm just thinking even about this specific event, Open Doors. This used to be, we've been doing this for many years, probably 10 or more. And this used to be an event at the university in a big auditorium. And last year it was the first edition that was online, and it was we got to use our Twitch experience and podcast watching and things like that to start figuring out a new way of doing this event itself. So yeah, I mean, it's affected a lot of things. Obviously it's had a lot of bad effects, but also some things changed for the good as well. And yeah, another key word that you mentioned there is acceptance. All of these technologies for video chatting and online learning and doing all these kind of things, they existed before, but they weren't as accepted. There was always the in-person alternative that was preferred, and people just didn't put in the effort to get to become better at working remotely, right? Because they say, oh, it's better to work in person, but that's because you had 20, 30 years of experience in working in person and almost no experience in working remote. So you didn't even put the effort to learn how to do that and how to take advantage of all the good things that come from it.
Absolutely. I've learned a lot. I think we all change our social norms and we'll be able to communicate over the web. We've learned how to trade off our conversations and take cues from someone. It's funny how much you have to learn to communicate on the web.
Yeah. It's the world is definitely an interesting place. So just to go a little bit more towards some content that students might be a little bit more directly interested in. You maybe you can tell us a little bit more about your background, what you did at university, and how you got to where you are. Just in a few lines.
Yeah, no, I've had a really fortunate career, and I always encourage people who are coming out of universities to be as adventurous as possible with their careers. I was a physicist originally. I went to a school called Caltech, and then followed up by going to NASA, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, where I studied asteroids. And my job was to go out to the radio telescope when people discovered that there might be an asteroid and figure out if it was going to hit the Earth. That was my job for a bunch of years. I like to think that I did a pretty good job of warning people. We haven't been hit by a big asteroid yet, so that's a good thing. I left academia to join startups because it was even more exciting than that. And I worked on a whole bunch of different startups, everything from 3D virtual reality to, in the very beginning, to building encryption technology, which was one of the first startups that I founded. I did a handful of startups, and then I got connected very early on. I was one of the first employees at a little tiny company called Blue Origin that wanted to put rockets in outer space. And I did that for a long time. And then I went and worked for building a research laboratory for a company called Intellectual Ventures that collected a bunch of patents and built companies, spin out companies out of patents like that. That's where I got in, switched from the mode of building a company for myself to try to build lots and lots of startup companies with lots of people. After I left Intellectual Ventures, I went to work for Paul Allen, also running an incubator and startup companies, and we built, again, more 3D VR technologies. We worked with a company called Magic Leap that some people might have heard of. I ran another space startup company called Stratolaunch, and we started getting into blockchain. We spun out a blockchain company. And eventually I left that and came to Madrona. So I've been really lucky to be able to work on, a ton of different technologies over time, see a whole bunch of different kinds of exciting companies. And I just say the thing that's probably a common thread there is I just love going for the most exciting thing out there. And certainly all those things seemed incredibly risky at the time. And certainly a bunch of them failed. I worked on a bunch of startups that didn't work anywhere. But there's always something great out there. And I think if there's a really exciting story and something that's super intellectually stimulating, people ought to go for that. It's a lot of fun.
But how do you go from, doing physics to learning how to program to doing blockchain cryptography to doing VR? Like, how do you get to learn, in a couple of years, all of these things? How do you even mentally approach switching, complete career paths like all of a sudden?
I actually think that programming and computer development is a pretty common thread amongst all of them. These days, I don't think you can be a physicist unless you know how to program computers. And I think that fundamental of, computer science and mathematics has helped me all the way. It all boils down to math and science and computer programming in the end. Something that's sort of funny about that, actually, now that I say that, is that the other skill that I really wished I developed in school and I didn't develop until later was really communicating and working with people and managing people and figuring out how to really inspire teams and move them forward. And that's as important as anything else. So the key to sort of moving between all those different exciting things is, maybe having really strong fundamentals, but also just really leaning on the people around you and figuring out how to, learn as much as possible from everybody around you and move things forward as a group. And that makes it much easier to get through all those learning curves. And again, maybe just to tie it back to what you and I do together, Vlad, like that's one of the things I love about Assist is there are people working in Assist who I can call and say, hey, I don't understand how to do this or that. How are we going to get around this corner? And usually somewhere in Assist, there's someone who can help me get there. So that's the technique that's always worked for me. And, I hope it works for others also.
So you'd say that one of the things that you would do a little bit differently if you were to go back in time would be to learn how to communicate better and how to get people around you to collaborate and do things together. How would you go about doing that? So if you were a student right now, if you were a first year, second year student, let's say, how would you go about getting better at this?
That's a great question. And it's funny. I think first you just have to be aware of it, right? Like if you're an engineering student, people are busy throwing big textbooks at you that you have to work through. And you've got, hours and hours of homework study at night where you're trying to figure out the answers to, technical problems. And the teamwork is, in that world, like, oh, gee, maybe I should go be part of a study group, and how do we work together to figure this stuff out? but nobody ever tells you, gee, you ought to take a management course, or you ought to take a course in leadership, or you need to figure out how to stand up and give a debate. Like, lots of engineers are kind of shy, and we don't want to do that. And so you kind of find out accidentally later that, gee, maybe that's the great thing to do. But there are organizations at universities and outside of universities that help people do that, right? People at universities that I work with have clubs, and they have groups of people who do innovation, at least in the people I talk to, right? There are programs that help people become entrepreneurs and leaders. And I think it's really great to get involved in that. Some of the best interns we have from colleges, some of the best developers I've worked with in other places have actually gone through entrepreneurship programs and things like that, where they're actually working with people to solve problems as a team and figure out how to build visions going forward. And I guess I think that's pretty important.
So you've already mentioned, communication, collaboration with people is really, really important. And I definitely think that in a lot of engineering courses, universities don't put enough focus on this as well. 10 years after you finish university, nobody asks you, what grade did you finish with, or right. what did you learn about this particular thing in this particular course, and things like that you were trying to figure out and do right then and there. But they are going to ask you, who do you know? Like this. That's I have a friend from university who is now a VP at Bank of America or something. You can start talking. That's actually much more important long term. So relationships with people and building these kind of relationships and collaboration is really important. But apart from this, so apart from collaboration and communication, what other things, what are the key criteria do you think there are for success? What works for you? What has worked for you so far?
It probably is what you just said. One of the great things that I've been very fortunate about is, getting to know other people and building a network of people who are doing amazing things. And I think that's really important. Somebody, a very famous scientist I talked to once, I said, what makes you successful? He's like, I only work on important things. Like, how do you know? And he said, well, mostly I ask other people what important things are, and they tell me. So I think that's great, and it really is. I couldn't agree with you more, Vlad, that people you meet in the university and early on in your career are super important to where you end up going, and it's as important to pay attention again early on to what you think is really cool and what's really interesting to work on, and get to know those people. Don't be afraid to ask. One of the very first people I met when I was at the university was a guy named Jim Westphal. He was a professor of geology at Caltech, and he was in charge of building the Hubble Space Telescope. And I just thought that was the coolest possible thing. And so I went to him and asked him for a job, and he gave me a job in the basement assembling microchips that would eventually go on the space telescope. And it was pretty tedious work, I gotta admit. It was a bunch of wiring, but it got me involved in a super cool project, and I met the best people there. And I think that's kind of how it goes.
I mean, yeah, you just mentioned that you worked on the Hubble telescope. That's amazing. That's insane. So we're getting close towards the end of the interview, and maybe as a closing question, I know that the hot topic is for a lot of the students, especially towards the final years, is what do I do with my life? What do I do with my career? Where do I start? What do you think are the most important areas to focus on if people don't know what to do?
Well, there's a pile of trends right now that I think are really long term. If people want to focus on particular areas, we already talked about Web 3.0. I think that's totally right. We all know that artificial intelligence and machine learning are really just beginning. There's a huge pile of opportunity there because the world is always rich in data and will keep on developing. And I think, again, that's a great place because It's rich in science and in engineering at the same time. So I think that's really important. And I think I might have mentioned something that's really important to me, and I think important to a lot of people in the world, is climate. We know that's a problem that's going to keep on developing, and we're finally seeing a lot of commitment to trying to do something. I hope that commitment continues to grow. I think there are lots of challenges there, and I think that's a really important space for people to think about. And maybe even a last point, and it kind of circles back to what we talked about early on, is this whole communication point. The world is getting more interconnected. We're finding more and more that it's important to communicate with people near and far, and we're finding that the tools for that are better and better and maybe different, right? It's not just this video chat, but it's Slack and it's Twitter and it's social media and it's videos. There's just a million different ways that messages go in and out. We know that there's a lot of conflict there around truth and misinformation and trying to be honest about things. So, I think it's keep in mind the important things in society today, and spend your time where you're going to make a difference. And as I say, where you're going to find a lot of fun and excitement and interesting things. There's just so much to do. Like, there's no end of it. I just love that.
Yeah, everybody wishes they had more time to do more things.
Absolutely.
So many interesting things to around. Keith, thank you so much for this wonderful talk. It was absolutely amazing.
Always a pleasure, Vlad. I hope we get to talk again, and I hope all the people at your program find great things to do, and maybe some of them will come work with you, and then I'll get to work with them.